Hi guys, and welcome to the video. So today we are going to discuss how to make your unit look and feel big. So before we move on to the actual video, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more real estate updates. If you don't manage your interior spaces correctly or effectively, life in a condo can be very messy. So we have had past experiences with some of our clients on how they felt about living in a condominium unit. Not everyone enjoys small spaces, but there are always ways or things that you can do that help improve your living quality inside a small unit. So I am going to break this down into around 4 tips that you guys can use for your units. Okay, so tip number 1. Tip number 1 is very obvious, and I think everyone already knows this, but it's very important, so I would have to reiterate it again. So tip number 1 would be to use lighter colors or more vibrant colors. The reason for this is because, let's say I put a dark color here and a light color here. It feels as though the darker color is advancing towards you, whereas the lighter color feels farther away. So if you apply this color principle into your walls, you would see that applying a darker color would make the walls seem closer to you and therefore smaller. So of course, if you live in a small condominium unit, as much as possible, you would want to expand your space and to make everything look bigger. So it's always the better choice to go for the lighter color, especially with small living spaces. Okay, so tip number 2 is do not be afraid of light. So many times I've observed as a designer for a lot of condominium units is that whenever a condominium gets turned over, it is only, let's say, limited to a number of light bulbs per unit. So usually if it's a 1-bedroom unit, you would only see around 2 light bulbs or 2 light sources for the bathroom, 1 for the hallway, 1 for the bedroom, and 1 for the living room. So the way, or the most cost-effective way of solving this would be to create light sources that are located on the walls or on the floor, like let's say through using a lampshade on your side tables or using a freestanding lamp. So another good way of solving this would be through adding brighter lights through buying higher wattage bulbs or higher watt light fixtures for your ceiling. So those are the 2 things that you can do that won't cost you too much if you know how to budget. And that's to add lights to the ceiling or to replace the bulbs in the ceiling and to add light sources on the floor area or on the surrounding areas. So the reason why we add light is because when you put light in a space, of course, the dark corners would go away, making it look like the space is expanding. Not just that, but also in terms of functionality. Let's say, of course, you have a sofa and that's where you read or that's where you spend your time reading. You could put a spotlight beside it so you could read better. So not only does light expand space, it also adds a lot of functionality into your condo. Okay, so tip number 3. Tip number 3 is to prioritize buying mid-size furniture or mid-size items first and then buying the small items right after. So I recommend this tip because as I've observed with a lot of people, whenever they buy small condominium units, of course, obviously your space is just limited. So what they tend to do is that they prioritize buying the tiniest furniture possible. But what they don't know is that, first of all, this is not really beneficial because if it's too small, if the items are too small, you won't use it anyway. And number 2, smaller items tend to look a lot messier. So if, let's say, I put a picture here of a room with mid-size furniture or average-size furniture that is proportionate to the height of the room, and right here I put a picture of a room that has small items, small multiple items, you would see that the room with the average height or the average sized items have more appeal, whereas the ones with the smaller ones, they tend to look a lot messier. So this also goes with choosing out furniture. So the way or the strategy of buying furniture for your unit is to first prioritize the big items that you really need. Let's say closets, study tables, beds, sofas, the obvious things. And then later on, once you've chosen all of those items and you've made sure that they are average to the room, not big, okay, that is when you buy the smaller items like the lamps or the other accessories that you might want. Let's say an organizer, a shelf. That's when you buy the smaller items so that you can plan your space effectively. Okay, so my fourth tip, which I think has the largest visual impact among all of the tips that I'm going to give you, is to make sure that you guys are using bigger frames or bigger decorative items rather than small. So much like the third tip, if you guys use, let's say, a big frame compared to a small frame, the bigger frame has the better tendency to create more elegance or to create a sense of elegance into your space. So having small frames isn't a bad thing, but as I think, or in my opinion as a designer, the bigger frames have a better visual impact. It creates more focus towards the space that you want to have, like, let's say, a focal point in. And at the same time, these frames can also be alternated with mirrors. So think about having a space with one big mirror as compared to a space with, let's say, multiple tiny mirrors. Of course, it's more visually striking to see something that looks more grandiose, just like the big mirrors, as compared to those small mirrors, which has a tendency to look messy, especially when your space starts to get busy. So what do I mean by busy? So busy spaces are usually how it looks like at the end of the day without all of the cleaning. So whenever you design a space, you have to consider what will it look like on a busy day where I'm not cleaning it. So of course, if you have more things going on, let's say in one wall, and then you leave it out for a messy day, the tendency is that space would not look as enticing as it would if it were cleaned up and if it were not being touched. So going back, compare that to having a big frame versus a small frame. If you have, let's say, a sofa with a big frame on top of it and a sofa with a small frame on top of it on a busy day, which one would look better? Which one would look cleaner, more elegant, and which one would look less busy, less hurtful to the eyes? So that's my fourth tip. Oh, and another thing I would like to add in terms of the fourth tip, when we were talking about the frames and the mirrors, you should also consider thinking about placing mirrors, because in relation to the second or the first tip I gave you guys, whenever you put a light source and of course you put a mirror, the tendency is that once the light source hits the mirror, that same light source will reflect to the rest of the space or explode to the rest of the space, expanding your space even more. So that's one of the small tricks I do that create like the largest visual impact inside the space. So what I tend to do is I create a space where I put a mirror and I put a track light near it, and I direct that track light's source or head onto the mirror so that the light that reflects onto the mirror will explode to the rest of the space. So that creates a photogenic type of condominium unit. Small spaces can feel just as luxurious as big ones as long as you know how to use these tips effectively. So I hope you guys learned something new today, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Before you go, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more real estate updates. This is GSR, keeping real estate simple.